Welcome. I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of the Unpopular podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And if you would do me a favor, please subscribe to wherever you're listening. Please subscribe to wherever you're watching. It would definitely mean a lot to me. You know what I mean? It means a lot that you got. And I want to thank the people that are, that have subscribed. It means a lot that you actually care what I got to say. So I appreciate y'all. But this is where we'll start. First and foremost, let me give a shout out to the WNBA. And I say this a lot, but it is what it is. The WNBA is usually good with doing a lot of things right. They were an example. Of course, the WNBA, even though it didn't get, mostly the NBA was talked about, but they did a really good job having a bubble for their players. They're usually first and front and center when it comes to acting or reacting to some of the social issues that we deal with. They need to get better at some of the care and treatment for their players and, of course, the money situation. But shouts out to the WNBA. And the other night, I think Thursday, the WNBA put on, they showcased what they do best, and that is the draft. The draft was really good, man. They're still restricted to the COVID situation, so they didn't have a huge, draft. All the players come and then, do the hats and everything. But, with Zoom, and shouts out to Holly Rowe. Holly Rowe is an example of someone that just does their job great. I've never had a problem with Holly Rowe, but of course, if I did, who cares? But, Holly Rowe did a great job. The WNBA did a great job with the draft. But with the draft, it brings conversation. A lot of people like to do winners and losers in the draft. A lot of people want to do who got snubbed. I'm not going to do the whole winners and losers because I like to think that if you get drafted to a respective sport, whether that's the NBA, whether that's the WNBA, I think you're doing something good. You are the top echelon of whatever sport that you play. So I think everyone's a winner if they get drafted. And even if you don't get drafted, we've seen cases of people, Fred VanVleet's won in the NBA. We've seen cases of people that even if they don't get drafted, they can still make a huge impact for a team. Fred VanVleet is an NBA champion, and he was very important to those Toronto Raptors. So shouts out to all the women, the young ladies that got drafted, man. And shouts out to the WNBA for putting on a show. However, I do have some, I guess I'll give my reaction slash observations about what I saw. First and foremost, man, these ladies, man, they know they came out in droves as far as, they dressed to the nines. Their families were really hype. Some of them had, some of them had a lot of family, some of them didn't. It was a good feel, man. It was a really good night. It was a good night to see the women and how excited they were. Of course, you'd be excited to get drafted, but it was just a good night, man. It was a good draft. However, there are some picks. Now, of course, I'm going to talk about some of the picks. And again, this is no disrespect to anybody. This is not me saying you shouldn't got drafted or whatever. Everyone that got drafted deserved to get drafted. Everyone that got drafted deserves to be in the WNBA. They're at the top of their class. But there are just some picks and some decisions that I didn't understand. First and foremost, shouts out to the Dallas Wings, man. The Dallas Wings, they killed it, man. They had the first overall pick, the second overall pick, and the fifth overall pick. And I think they knocked it out the park, getting Charlie Collier, getting Awak Curry, and getting Chelsea Dungy. They did a really good job with that, man. Now, I think, one thing that Dallas had going for it is they had a lot of guards. One thing that they did, especially last year, they struggled mightily at center play and forward play. So the fact that you had the number one overall pick and got Charlie Collier from Texas, she was the best player in the draft. A lot of people wanna. But even if you question if she wasn't, they got the second best player with Awak Kerr from Finland. They definitely addressed what they needed to address. Now after that, they also got Dana Evans from Louisville, who was a guard. Uh, they went pretty guard heavy though, and that's the thing. Like, I'm not, there was a lot, and you heard Rebecca Lobo and I think LaChina Robinson, I believe her name is. I apologize if I messed it up, but you saw that because there's so limited spots in the WNBA. Usually teams rosters are full at this point, so you get to a point in the draft and you get to like for Dallas, outside of the two positions, which is center and power forward, which you addressed the first two. It's like you're pretty much you're not going to draft another like power forward. You're not going to draft another center. So who do you draft? You know what I mean? So I think they did a really good job. Now they have a lot of guards, seeing as though now that you have Chelsea Dungy, who's a shooting guard, you have Dana Evans, who's a point guard, and of course the guards that you already have. And I think they got a guard in free agency. I am curious to see what happens moving forward with that team, seeing as though who stays and who goes, who gets minutes, who doesn't. Because when I say they're loaded as far as they got some good players. I don't think that, I think they only won 8 games last year. I don't think that they're good enough to compete for a championship or anything like that, but I do think that they have a lot of young talent, and I think that they did a really good job in the draft. What they did was they addressed their needs at first, getting a center and the best center in the draft, in my opinion. She's Charlie Collier. She's 6'5". She can shoot the three. She can operate down low, and then you got the best power forward. So you can pretty much have a twin tower tandem. You know what I mean? So I think they did pretty good. Now there are some decisions and some picks that I didn't understand. Like, don't get me wrong. We're gonna go to 4, and I think that's the biggest question mark out of the entire night. Now, I understand, and don't get me wrong. No, none of these women should. I feel all of these women deserve to be drafted, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have. However, when you have Arlena Guarentes. When you have Arena Guarentes, who a lot of people were saying she's going to be top 5. She was good enough to be top 5. She showed out when she was playing for Rutgers. She was one of the best players in college basketball. And for the Fever to, I understand that I guess you wanted to address the point guard position, but when you go for Kirsty Godrezic, who, again, from West Virginia, who there's nothing, she's a great player. She deserved to be drafted, but I feel like you could have done better. You could have got Arlena Guarentes, because she was, yes, she's a shooting guard, but she played a lot of the one at Rutgers as well. So I just feel like they kind of reach for that. Now, don't get me wrong. Kaiser Guarentes was great. She was really good at West Virginia, but I just don't think that she was better than Arlena Guarentes. Not to mention the fact that Arlena Guarentes, she dropped, and that's the thing. There's a lot of people that went after her. Like, I think that she was better than Chelsea Dungy, who went to the Wings. I think that she was better than Stephanie Watts. I think that she was better than Aaliyah Wilson. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with these people. And they deserve to be drafted. But these are guards that got picked before her. And like the Dallas getting Shayla Hill. Like, don't get me wrong, she's cool from Australia, but I seen Arlena Guarentes, and she was incredible. Not to mention the fact that and I kind of understood. I kind of understood as the draft, but I expected Dana Evans, especially, and here's why I expected Dana Evans to go in the first round. I didn't think she was going to go number one or anything, but Ari McDonald, she really made her name and made her she really made her name in March Madness. She led the Arizona Wildcats all the way to the national championship, where they unfortunately lost at the buzzer to Stanford. And she really made her name, and that's what Holly Rowe and Rebecca Lobo and them were saying, is that her stock skyrocketed due to March Madness, and that stock got her to number 3. Now, do I think that she would have been drafted? Yes, I think that she was good enough, especially how she scores. I think she was good enough to get drafted, and I think that she would have got drafted, but I think that she wouldn't have got drafted at number 3. I think that due to her success in March, it incredibly boosted her stock. The same, in my opinion, can be said for Dana Evans, and kind of more. Dana Evans was killing people when she was at Louisville. Not to mention, I feel she did it a little longer and more of a run than Ari McDonald. Now, do I think that Ari McDonald getting picked 3rd was a mistake? No, but I do think that if you want a guard, or if you're going for a point guard, Dana Evans could have been a tad bit better than, like I said, she could have been better than Kaiser Gondrick. She could have been better than Shayla Hill. She could have been better than a lot of guards that went before her. Now, again, I understand that teams address needs, you know what I mean? But again, you pick people that play the same position that I feel could have done better than her. And she, like I said, she went to Dallas, which is cool. But again, and that's why I said Dallas got a ton of guards, because they've had guards there. But it's just confusing. It's confusing why some people dropped. It was confusing why Alina it was confusing why Alina Guerentes fell. It was kind of confusing why Dana Evans fell. It was kind of confusing why Dejerna Carrington from Baylor, why she fell. I think that she was pretty good. Why Nadia Jones fell. Why Trinity Baptiste fell. It was just a little confusing. I'm not here. I'm not in these war rooms. I'm not the one making a decision. I would be the last person to make a decision. It just doesn't make sense to me. But again, shouts out to all the women. All the women that got drafted deserve to be drafted. And there's a lot of women that didn't get drafted that I feel will still be able to make it to the league and have a huge impact. You know what I mean? But I do, and shouts out to even I said this on Twitter. Shouts out to Kiana Jeter. Kiana Jeter is a guard from Towson. She's the first guard from Towson to ever get drafted. I think that's huge for the school, man. I know they had what's his name? I forgot his name, but she's the first woman that get drafted from Towson. Now, being from the DMV, that's pretty huge. Now I know Towson is kind of deep in Baltimore, but I want to single her out and shouts out to her because she made school history, being the first woman ever drafted from Towson, and I think she's only 5'9". So the fact that a woman that is undersized but her scoring prowess is crazy, yo. She will put a bucket on your head. So shouts out to them, man, and shouts out to all the women. I talked about the Fevers pick. I talked about some of the people falling, but at the end of the day, everyone put on a great show. Everyone was deserving of getting drafted. Again, shouts out to the families. I remember Malika Unaware, her grandmother in the background was great, and that family was deep, bro. And I just like the fact that I think I told you this before when I think the WNBA did it the first time. I think that we're forever seeing the draft, not just WNBA, but draft in general change. I think that, of course, when the world gets back right, if the world gets back right, I think that they'll have still the invite people to the draft, but I think that the leagues, the NFL, the NBA, the WNBA, the MLB, I think that they're going to utilize Zoom a lot more. I think they're going to utilize that whole interview from home, have a family in the background feel. Like I feel they're going to do that more because I think it's been a huge success for the WNBA because what we've seen has been great. And other news about the WNBA, since we're kind of here, is there have been talks of an expansion, which I think that we should be all for. I mean, at this point, I think there's only 12 teams in the league, and I think that when you have which kind of boggles down the draft, and it really makes it tough to make it in the WNBA, seeing as though, like I said, I think there's only like 12 teams in the WNBA, and it's like how do you expect a league to grow with only 12 teams like that? And so, and they're talking about expanding it to maybe another team or another two teams, which I'm definitely all for. Not only does it give another experience, it just gives us two more teams to cheer for. It gives however many roster spots for more women to come on, and it just expands the league. When you have a league like the NFL that has 32 teams, the NBA has 30. I think that, of course, you're going to say money wise, but I think more time, like especially this period in time, the WNBA is more famous, or is a lot bigger than it's ever been. I understand in the beginning, it was exciting, but now we have women's movements, we have women empowerment, we have so much stuff that's revolved around the WNBA. I feel this is the perfect time to have expansion teams. Because, like I said, the popularity is at an all-time high. Not to mention, not just the popularity, but the quality of players, the quality of games at an all-time high. It's like you see players like Elena Deladon, you see players like Sue Bird, you see players like not Maya Moore, but you see the talent level is at an all-time high. Like even the draft, Charlie Collier, she's great. Ari McDonald, she's great. Awak Kerr, she's great. Chelsea Dungy, she's great. Hell, you can go all the way to the second round. Dana Evans, she was really good. Elena Guarentes, she's good. Dee Richards, she's good. It's just the level of talent. I mean, all the women are good, don't get me wrong, but the level of talent coming into the league and that's already in there is at an all-time high. So I think that the talks now make sense of an expansion, and I think the league is closer to doing it than not, seeing as though the product that they're putting out an incredible product. The women have been incredible. I think, again, the pay wise, then it needs to get a little better, which it has increased over the last few years, but I do think it's still not on the level. And I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, which is unfortunate, but I don't know if we'll ever get to that point where WNBA players are making as much as NBA players. But I do like the fact that the conversation is continuously being had, and at least it looks like the WNBA is trying to improve day after day, year after year on the product that it's putting out. We saw the jerseys. Hell, we even saw the jersey debacle this week, man. And I didn't know about it, so I apologize for not knowing and speaking on it. For people that don't know, I think the Dallas Wings, they had a Rebels jersey that was the WASP, W-A-S-P. However, if you did some backstory, which I did not, which I apologize about, if you did some backstory, you realize that I think that the women and minorities were kind of like quieted and hushed out and moved aside for the WASP, even though that they were a huge part of it. And because of that, they didn't really rock with it like that. So I know Dallas, a lot of people that bought the jersey, they got refunds and everything, and Dallas, they recalled the jerseys and everything, so I don't think that they'll be having that jersey. And the Washington Mystics, the Rise jersey, for people that didn't see, they have the trim of the jersey has like the 19th Amendment that kind of spoke to women. However, what I didn't know, women didn't have the opportunity to vote on it. So a lot of people were calling for the Mystics to kind of get rid of that jersey as well. Um, but all that being said, I do think that the WNBA is doing a really good job in its growth. I think it's growing, and I think that this is the time, better than any time that we've seen, to have more teams and to definitely expand. And I know one of the biggest fears of expansion is the loss of money. However, like I said, with the popularity at an all-time high with the WNBA, um, the talent level that's coming in and that's already there at an all-time high, and the fact that the WNBA is usually first on a lot of things, even though it doesn't get a lot of press about it, it's usually first and better at a lot of things than the men's sports are. I think that this is the perfect time for an expansion. And again, shouts out and congratulations to all the women that got drafted the other night, and I'm excited to see what they do. I'm excited to see what they're able to put on the floor after the draft, I guess. And I'll say this: there are some teams like right now the Aces are loaded, man. The Aces are loaded. Seattle is loaded. The Aces, Seattle, Washington. We're gonna see what they do. Even though the Washington didn't have a draft pick, they still have a great coach. They still have Natasha Cloud. They still have Tina Charles. They still have Adele Deladon. They have some really good pieces. But like I said, I don't really see outside of maybe Washington. Outside of, I mean, I, maybe those three. I don't really see anybody. It's going to be tough for me not to see. I'll be surprised if we don't see an Aces and Seattle finals again. Like they're loaded and they got some really good pieces. I mean they already have pieces. I mean you have Kelsey Plum coming back, Liz Cambage, Aja Wilson. Like they're pretty loaded. The Sparks are pretty loaded too. They did really good in the draft, and of course when you have Nabumike and everything, and then Chicago. I don't know if Chicago. Chicago Sky getting Shayla Hill, also getting Candace Parker. Like this is going to be an exciting season, man. I'm excited to see the product, and I think that the talent level, like I said, is better than ever. But I would be surprised if we don't see an Aces Seattle final, because I mean, even though you lost, I know Seattle lost. I forgot her name, which it escaped me. I apologize. They still have Breanna Stewart, who is arguably one of the greatest women basketball players ever. So I'm excited to see what this season brings, man. I really am. And again, congratulations and shouts out to all the women that got drafted to the WNBA this year. So there's that. Moving forward. So probably the biggest news in the NBA came suddenly and unexpectedly, and that was LaMarcus Aldridge retiring due to an irregular heartbeat that he experienced, I think, earlier this week. Here's the thing about LaMarcus Aldridge. LaMarcus Aldridge has been dealing with this his entire career. I remember his early days in Portland. He was dealing with this, and of course, you didn't really hear much about it in San Antonio, but definitely early in his career, you heard about this, and at Texas, you heard about it. So the fact that he said that this was the worst and scariest it's ever been lets me know that, oh, this was serious, seeing as though you've already dealt with it. I'll say this, man. LaMarcus Aldridge, he's one of those players that were good, but just wasn't loud. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like a Tim Duncan. I'm not saying he's as good as Tim Duncan. Chill out. But what I'm saying is Tim Duncan had an incredible game. He just wasn't loud with it. Kobe had a loud game. Kevin Garnett had a loud game. KD has a loud game. And when I say loud, they score buckets at an all-time high. They're loud with it. They'll yell. LeBron James has a loud game. Steph Curry has a loud game. There's people that don't have a loud game but are sneaky or incredibly effective. They just aren't as flashy as other people, like a Tim Duncan, like LaMarcus Aldridge. LaMarcus Aldridge will go down as one of the greatest mid-range shooting bigs we've ever seen. I'm not saying he's the greatest, but LaMarcus Aldridge, his high release, his mid-range jumper set him apart, and why he's one of, more than likely he's going to end up in, I feel Portland might probably retire his jersey because he was that good. And this is a huge blow. Him retiring is a huge blow for Brooklyn. Don't get me, I understand Brooklyn has KD and Kyrie and James Harden and Blake Griffin, but LaMarcus Aldridge can play center better than Blake Griffin. And I think that now, of course, defensively, they're still the whole team sucks. But I think LaMarcus Aldridge's ability to play center and kind of take some of the pressure off of DeAndre Jordan and able to operate and score at that center position was huge. What LaMarcus Aldridge did things that nobody else on the team could do, or nobody else on the team does regularly. Like, yes, Kevin Durant can shoot mid range and score at a high level. So can James Harden. Well, he doesn't really do that, but so can Kyrie. But the fact that LaMarcus Aldridge is able to use angles, and he's money from mid range, and he's a lot better he's a lot better scorer. I'm not saying dunker, but a lot better scorer than Blake Griffin. So that's a huge blow. But shouts out to LaMarcus Aldridge for putting his health above basketball. Like, at the end of the day, I love basketball to death. I play basketball at least 3 or 4 times a week. I love the game of basketball. And I understand, and I'm not even in the league. I don't get paid for it. I understand how tough it is to make a decision to walk away. And I couldn't imagine the decision when you got money on the line. This is your livelihood. And you have to be, I understand the whole basketball lifer, like I understand football lifers and how tough it is for them to walk away, or how tough it is for them to figure out what to do after basketball or after football. So I can imagine how tough it was for LaMarcus Aldridge to make this decision. Do I think that he is a Hall of Famer? I don't know. And I'll say I don't know, and I'll stick by that because stats wise, yeah. I mean, he's one of 19 players of all time to, I think, score like over 2,500 points or something like that. LaMarcus Aldridge is a great person, but I think that it kind of goes. Again, I don't know. I don't know. Stats wise, he is, but it kind of goes back to the whole flashy thing, and he wasn't as great as a Tim Duncan, but he did have a great game. So I don't know. And I think it's a little too early to say, but I do want to congratulate LaMarcus Aldridge for making that decision and putting his health over basketball, which a lot of people don't do. And again, he goes down, in my opinion, as one of the greatest Portland players to ever play. I mean, you see Portland legends. You see Damian Lillard. I know Brandon Roy said something. People understand how important LaMarcus Aldridge is to Portland. And honestly, if you're a real basketball fan, people know how good LaMarcus Aldridge was his entire career. Again, LaMarcus Aldridge will go down as one of the greatest mid-range shooters to ever play. Like, I would say, people will call it blasphemy, but honestly, LaMarcus Aldridge's mid-range game is on the same level as like a Carmelo Anthony back in the day. Carmelo, we all know how great, but as it goes back to a loud game versus a more quiet game. Carmelo Anthony has more of a loud game. He's more of a scorer. Of course, he's better than LaMarcus Aldridge when it comes to putting the ball on the ground and shooting threes. But when we talk about mid-range, a lot of people want to look at Carmelo Anthony as one of the greatest mid-range shooters to ever play. I think LaMarcus Aldridge has to be up there, and I think he's made a name for that. And again, shouts out to LaMarcus Aldridge, and I hope that his health gets back to where it needs to get back to. So shouts out to you, and I hope I wish nothing but the best for LaMarcus Aldridge, and it was a pleasure watching him throughout the years. Again, a lot of people that were just casual fans may not know the impact or may not know how good LaMarcus Aldridge was, but true basketball fans, and people that have been watching the NBA for as long as he's been in there or as long as they've been alive understand when you hear LaMarcus Aldridge's name, you kind of know how important that or how good he was. That's why a lot of people are upset when they got LaMarcus Aldridge. I understand he might not be in his prime, but LaMarcus Aldridge is still a bucket. LaMarcus Aldridge is still tough. I mean, he has a 56-point game. I believe he has and he has a whole bunch of 40 plus point games. So for people that say, "Oh, he's a bum or a scrub," and clearly ain't watch him in Portland because that man and I think he had a 50-point game in San Antonio. So shouts out to LaMarcus, man. Shouts out to him. But with LaMarcus leaving, it kind of made me think about something. So some of our, the league is the league is in a weird place right now, but not in a bad way. When you look at some of our current stars, LeBron, KD, Curry, Kawhi, they're not younglings or young springs anymore. You know what I mean? Like LeBron James, he'll be 40 in 5 years. KD and Curry will be upwards of 36, 37 in 5 years. You know what I mean? And it's like, I wanted to say, I was thinking about where the league will be in 5 years, because we're at a time where LeBron James is getting a little older, KD is getting a little older, Curry's getting a little older, and while I think that they could still be here in 5 years, I don't think that their games will warrant them to be the greatest player or the best player in the league, which is an argument between LeBron and other players, or I think Curry will still be able to shoot, but I think he'll be 30, 38, 39 in 5 years. I just don't think he'll be shooting like he's shooting now. So it got me thinking. What I wanted to do was I wanted to do my top 5 players in 5 years. Now, again, this is my list. I always preface this by saying this is my list, so I could be wrong, I could be right, who knows. But looking at the landscape of the league, when I said it's in a weird place, because I believe in 5 years it's going to look completely different. When I say completely different, we're going to look at players differently. There's going to be players that have been elevated. There's going to be players that maybe have been, kind of lowered their status. And I don't think we're going to look at, even though we know the legacy that LeBron James leaves, we're not going to look at LeBron James as the best player in the league anymore. We're not going to look at KD as arguably the second best player. We're not going to look at Curry as one of the best players, because I think their age. I don't think that that's going to, I don't think that it minimizes what they do, or I don't think that I think that they still have status in the league, of course, but it's more off legacy at that point. So, I wanted to think in 5 years who is going to be the top 5 players in the league. And it was tough, man. A couple people that didn't make the cut, Ja Morant. We know how explosive Ja Morant is. Ja Morant is Jesus. Like his bounce ability and the fact that he's able to lead a team, especially a team that has Jaren Jackson who's injured. I think I don't know if he'll make he didn't make the cut in my opinion, but he'll definitely be up there. Of course, we got Devin Booker. I mean, he scored 70 points a game, and we know, or not a game, but he scored 70 points in a game, and we know how good Devin Booker is, especially scoring wise. He's an elite scorer. He'll give you 40 to 50 any night, and I think that's not going to change, especially with his age. Donovan Mitchell didn't make the cut for me, but these are people that, of course, honorable mentions, I guess you could say. I think these people are still going to be great, but they just didn't make my top 5. But Donovan Mitchell, I think that what he's doing in Utah can definitely change. I think that what he's doing in Utah, especially with how Utah is building around him, with him and Rudy Gobert, I think that they could be primed to win a championship sometime. I do think that they need to bring in maybe another scorer that can kind of create for themselves. But Donovan Mitchell definitely would be up there in 5 years. So will Trae Young. I think Trae Young's the closest thing. Now, before I say this, there will never be another Curry. I will stand on my soapbox and say that there will never be another Curry. But I do think that Trae Young is the closest thing that we have to Curry right now, as far as his ability to shoot long distance and stuff like that. So, I got Trae Young, Nikola Jokic. I think he'll be like 29 or 30 years old. The only reason why he didn't make my list because I need to see how it's kind of tough when you don't know how bigs age. Some bigs age really well, some bigs don't. That's why Joel Embiid didn't make my list. He'll still be young, but even now he's dealing with injury. I don't know how he's going to fare. I think Damian Lillard didn't make my list because I think he'll be a little up there in age, and we need to see what happens with him in Portland. But those are my honorable mentions, I guess. And again, there's no taking. John Morant's still great. Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, Nikola Jokic, Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid. These are all Jaylen Brown. These are all still really good players. They just didn't make my list. And here's get to the list. This is our number 5. Number 5, I have Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons will be 29 in 5 years. And Ben Simmons, because of his speed, his size, his agility, he's one of the better defenders, especially at the whatever position he plays. He's one of the better defenders in the league. And a lot of people want to knock him, including myself sometimes. A lot of people want to knock him on his inability to shoot. However, when you look, he still dominates the game in so many areas. He dominates the game defensively. He dominates the pace of the game. And he dominates as far as getting other people involved as well as getting to the rim. There's a reason why a lot of people look at Philly, at least this year. A lot of people look at Philly and say that they have enough to win a championship. And it's not just because Joel Embiid is an MVP candidate. It's also because Ben Simmons is on a level right now that he might just win the Defensive Player of the Year, and he's also, he'll give you 42. He gave 42 to Rudy Gobert, and Rudy Gobert is a two-time Defensive Player of the Year. So I think Ben Simmons will only get better with age. I've kind of lost faith in him developing a shot. I do think his confidence will be up there to maybe shoot more, but I just don't think he'll ever be able to. At this point, it doesn't look like he's making a concerted effort to improve his shot. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he still dominates, and that's why, with his size, his defensive ability, his ability to see the floor, his ability to control the pace of the game, that's why I have him at number 5. As far as who will be the top 5 players in 5 years. Number 4, I have Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum will be 28. Jayson Tatum just had a 53-point game. Now, I will say this. I knew Jayson Tatum will be good coming out of Duke, but I didn't think that he would be this good this early. His length and his scoring ability makes him, there's a lot of people right now that have him in the top 10 list right now. And I'm not one of those people, but I do think that he is at least top 15 to top 20 player. And I think that will only grow. Jayson Tatum is incredible, bro. And I do think he needs to improve a little bit defensively. And I do think he needs to improve getting his teammates involved. But when we just talk about his scoring aspect, he is, and Jayson Tatum, and I know people are going to kill me because people hate this man. But Jayson Tatum reminds me a lot of a younger Indiana Pacers Paul George. Paul George is, and a little bit now, when he's on. But Paul George's game is so smooth, and the way he's able to find his shot and get to the rim, that's kind of what Jayson Tatum does. He's just, he's younger. So I think Jayson Tatum at least will be the 4th on my list as best players in the league. You know what I mean? Moving forward. Number 3, I have Zion. Now, it was really hard between 2 and 3 because Zion, I didn't realize he'll be 25 in 5 years. Zion will be younger than me than I am now in 5 years. And that's, man, the fact that he's probably, at least right now, one of the most unstoppable players we've ever seen with his size and his ability to his strength and his ability to dunk on anybody and get to the rim with ease. And the fact that I do think that he needs to improve his shot. But I think that Zion is a lot more than just. Now, I will say this though, for a person that athletic, for a person with that much agility, for a person with that much bounce, the fact that he is god awful at defense, or he didn't even try on defense, I think that he needs to most definitely improve on that. But Zion at this stage cannot be stopped. He looks at double teams like, dude, are you serious? You got only two people. Like Zion, we've never seen anyone like that. And I do think one reason why I put him at third is his ability to shoot needs to be better. His defense most definitely needs to improve. But I still don't know. He did lose some weight, so congratulations with that. But I still don't know if his body type, the way it is now, is cohesive in winning. As far as when I say cohesive winning, I don't know. Like he's still pretty big in my opinion. So while that works to his advantage, that also kind of makes him an easier target for injuries. And of course, I don't want to see anybody injured. I don't want to see him injured, but that's definitely something that kind of is on the back of my mind. Like he could get hurt anytime, and he's huge. So who knows? But and of course he came into the league with injury with the knee and everything. So, but that's why I have him third, because he's unstoppable. Like his strength and his speed and his agility and his finishing ability around the rim, whether it's a dunk or a contact layup, he is second to none as far as right now. So that I have Zion number 3. I have Luka at number 2. I mean, Luka will be 27. Luka's ability his dribbling ability, his feel for the game is like that of a veteran. Now, I know it definitely helped that he's been playing professional overseas since he was like 16, but his knowledge of the game now and his ability to, pace himself and his ability to get to the rim and his shooting ability, especially the step back three. His step back three is so good now. People will want to compare him to James Harden, who a lot of people think is arguably the greatest step back shooter ever. Luka, I just don't see Luka's game to me will develop and improve like fine wine, seeing as though he's not the most athletic as far as he's not about to yam on you. He's not the most brute force of player, but his game is just smooth and is smart, and he knows angles, and he does crazy trick shots, and he gets his players involved. He's probably, outside of maybe Ben Simmons, which I think Luka might be better at, seeing angles and getting assists and getting their players and getting their teammate involved as far as assists. I don't see Luka's game falling off anytime soon, and that's why I have him at 2. And I think he's so good now, just with time and experience and age, he could arguably be the best player in 5 years. I am not gonna go as far as saying that, which you'll see who I have at number 1, but I have Luka at number 2. And at number 1, I have Giannis. Giannis to be 31. At this moment, a lot of people argue if Giannis is arguably the best player in the league, seeing as though he's arguably the most unstoppable player from getting from coast or going coast to coast. Of course, we know the biggest detriment of Giannis is his shooting ability, especially outside of the paint. I mean, he's shooting like 90% in the paint, but like it's horrible when we talk about 3-point. Now, his 3-point has improved, but it's not good. However, Giannis at this moment, a lot of people are questioning if he's the best player in the league, and I think that's just going to improve. I mean, his body's going to get. I mean, he'll be 31 in 5 years. So, I think hopefully his shooting ability improves. I mean, I think he was second last year he's a 2-time MVP. He was second in Defensive Player of the Year, I believe, or first. He won Defensive Player of the Year. I'm sorry. He won Defensive Player of the Year. He's a 2-time MVP. I mean, Giannis, I just think that that's going to improve. And I think that it's, especially if he gets a shot. That's one thing everyone says. Giannis, it's scary to think of how good Giannis could be if he develops a shot. And you know, I I think the league will be in a really good place. Even though I said it's in a weird place, because even though we're not really thinking about it, our stars are getting up there in age. I'm not saying that they're breaking down or anything, but the people that we've grown up with, or the people that we're used to seeing, like I said, a LeBron, a KD, a Curry, Kawhi, James Harden would be up there in a little bit. Our stars are gonna be a little older soon, and some of them are gonna be like, especially, I don't know now. LeBron is a freak athlete, but a lot of these players are getting to that age where they're gonna start thinking about retirement. Now I know medicine and training is different, so a lot of players can play longer than usual, but they're going to start getting towards that, 36, 37, 34, 35. Those, especially in history, those are retiring ages. So I'm excited to see what's next as far as who the next stars are going to be. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to hold on to the stars that we have as long as we have them, but like I said, the league could look a lot different in 5 years, and hell, the league can look a lot different in 2 years. But those are the 5 players that I think will shine brightest in 5 years and could arguably be in conversation for best players in the league. The 5 that I just said. So there's that. Moving forward, and my last topic, what I wanted to do was, we saw a lot of movement, and we're going to move over to the NFL. We saw a lot of movement this offseason in the NFL. There was a lot of big names that moved. And there's still a lot of free agents. Like I said, I talked about last week, Antonio Brown still a free agent, Melvin Ingram still a free agent, Russell Okung still a free agent. There's Steven Nelson. There's a lot of free agents that still, but there has been a lot of movement this offseason in the NFL. And what I want to do was, for my last topic, I wanted to do my top 5, like, who has most to prove? My 5 players that have the most to prove, whether it's due to injury or whether it's because they're in a new spot. These are the 5 players that I think have the most to prove. Number 5, I have Jadeveon Clowney. Now, the reason why I said he hasn't enough to prove, because a lot of people, he's a former number 1 overall pick. It hasn't worked. It didn't work in Houston. It didn't work in Houston. It didn't work in Seattle, and it didn't work in Tennessee. He had maybe 1 or 2 good years in Houston, and those good years were with J.J. Watt out. A lot of people are saying that because of the move to get Jadeveon Clowney and play him alongside Myles Garrett, that this could make Cleveland a Super Bowl contending team. But if you couldn't do that against prime J.J. Watt, prime J.J. Watt is arguably one of the greatest defensive players we've ever seen. I'm not saying he is, but he's one of the greatest, at least top, maybe 10. And if that's the case, the attention he's getting. So he's getting all that attention, and you can't thrive like with that. And I'm not saying Myles Garrett's bad, but he's not prime J.J. Watt. And then you go to Seattle, which they need you. Like, Seattle's defense, we all know, has been god-awful since the Legion of Boom. And they pick you to go there and make a huge impact, and you didn't. And then you go to Tennessee, and you didn't make an impact, like, at all. You didn't really – Tennessee's defense wasn't good. So I say he has a lot to prove because he's a former number 1 overall pick. A lot of people are saying because of this move and because he's playing alongside – Myles Garrett in that incredible defense, that he puts them over the top. They should get to the Super Bowl. A lot of people are saying, I'm not saying that, but a lot of people are saying they can at least make it to the AFC Championship with this roster. Now, I say he has a lot to prove because, again, you're a former number 1 overall pick and you haven't worked in your last 3 destinations. And at some point, people are going to start looking and saying, and they could have gotten to this point, at least I've gotten to this point, where it's like, I don't know what to expect. I don't expect much from him, even though he's in the number 1 overall pick. I don't expect much because he's been to different places and has not produced. So I think that he he has a lot to prove as far as, is he the number one? I mean, I know how incredible he was at South Carolina, but at this point in his career, the number one overall pick has not been warranted. He has not been good enough, and he hasn't played well enough to solidify him being a number one overall pick. And I think that this is another situation. I mean, another team, and a lot of people are saying because they picked him up, they are good enough to at least make it to an AFC Championship / Super Bowl because of him being on the team. And I think he has a lot to prove in that manner. Number 4, I have Cam Newton. Now, as far as total career, Cam Newton does not have much to prove. He was a rookie of the year, set a rookie record for, I think, touchdowns. He led a Panthers team to 15-1. He was an MVP. He has a Super Bowl appearance. He's arguably one of the greatest rushing quarterbacks we've ever seen. Cam Newton, as far as a total career, has nothing to prove. However, if we just look at what we saw last year or the last few years to this year, he has a lot to prove. Of course, the year before last, coming off injury with the shoulder, he was having the best season as far as stat-wise the most accurate season he's ever had before the shoulder injury. And then, of course, we know what happened last year with New England. They didn't have a lot of pieces around him. Of course, COVID hit him, and it's kind of hard being out as long as he was out, and it was hard for everyone. Of course, shouts out to the people that were able to get through it, but it was hard for everyone with the COVID. This year, a lot of people were saying Cam Newton should retire. A lot of people saying Cam Newton was the biggest problem in New England. I was one of the people that's saying, if you look at the freaking people around him, you had N'Keal Harry and Jacoby Meyer. You know what I'm saying? Like you had the piece you had around was god awful. But I say he has a lot to prove because you come back, they get 2 really good tight ends. They get while they don't have top players, you do get Kendrick Bourne, you do get Nelson Aguilar, you get better receivers. So now they helped you. You've been helped. They give you the pieces. Now it's up to you to prove that last year was more the fact that it was the first year in the system. You didn't have a lot of pieces around you. Now we're going to start to – now, to me, while you don't have, Patrick Mahomes level talent, you do have better talent around you. And it's really up to Cam Newton to see how far they go. Now, there's a lot of – not to mention – there's a lot of players that opted out last year that will be coming back. So I think that Cam Newton has a lot to prove, saying that last year was more of other things instead of him just being as bad as he was. Now I think he had 8 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. It wasn't good. And I was on the fence. Not saying this. I was on my soapbox saying, look at the talent around him. He had COVID. Look how good he was before COVID. But I think Cam Newton does have something to prove, to say now that you have 2 tight ends, now that you have more or better receivers than you have, the running game should be better. It's on him. It's on him to prove us to prove that last year was more of an outlier year than the norm at this point. Number 3, I have Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, and I say number 3 because Matthew Stafford has never been on a team that was good enough, or he's never been on a team that you thought was good enough to at least win anything. Yes, you had Megatron and you had, you had that, but he's never been on a team that had expectations of winning. That's most definitely different now that you're on the LA Rams. The defense is incredible. You have incredible pieces as far as offensively. A lot of people are saying that this team, at least on paper, the roster-wise, is good enough to – they should be good enough to make it to at least an NFC championship. And a lot of people were saying that the reason why the reason why the Rams were held back the last few years was because of Jared Goff. And then you bring in Matthew Stafford, who a lot of people, including myself, feels is better than Jared Goff and should be better than Jared Goff. I think that, they should be good enough to at least make it to the AFC Championship, or at least close. So I think Matthew Stafford has a lot to has a lot to prove. Not to mention, while he hasn't missed a lot of games due to injury, he has been injured almost every season. Of course, he's a warrior and he's fought through it and everything. But again, Matthew, we're waiting to see, is Matthew Stafford just a guy that can give you a lot of great stats on a trash team with no expectations to him, or is he because hell, he didn't even win this SEC in Georgia, and we know how much of a gunslinger he is. So I think Matthew Stafford has a lot to prove. I think there's a lot of people that say you gave up too much for him. A lot of people were saying that. Of course, we feel he's an upgrade from Jared Goff, but at what cost? But I think that I think it'd be good, but I do think he has a lot to prove. Number 2, I have Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was arguably the worst quarterback last year. And that is coming off, of course, injuries and everything, but he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, even though it was off an injury, and we know what happened with Nick Foles. But before that injury, he was on pace to win the MVP. And Carson Wentz, a lot of people were saying that he could be the next great quarterback, seeing as though he was on pace to win the MVP that year before he got hurt, and then we know what happened with Nick Foles in the Super Bowl. But last year, he was god awful. Now, a lot of people, there's people are saying that's due to the fact that Philly year after year dealing with injuries. His entire offensive line was decimated. His entire wide receiver core was decimated. We know the relationship between him and Doug Peterson. We also know the relationship between Doug Peterson and the front office. There was just a lot that went wrong with Philly, and Carson Wentz was one of them. And there's a lot of people now that saying, because Carson Wentz goes to Indianapolis, and he's reunited with Frank Reich, a lot of people are saying that Indianapolis could make it to a division championship. A lot of people are saying they have Super Bowl aspirations because of him. Now, he has to be better than Phillip Rivers. If he's not better than Phillip Rivers, then this is a god awful. Now, I will say this though, Phillip Rivers was better than him last year. I will say that. But with the pieces around him, he has the firepower and the defense to at least make some noise in the AFC playoffs. It's just, was the Carson Wentz last year just doing too much, or was everything around him due to the injuries and his relationships and stuff with his coaching? Was that was the Carson Wentz that we've seen the norm, or was that just a 1-year thing? Because if the Carson Wentz that we got when he was a front runner for the MVP before he got hurt, if that's the Carson Wentz that we get, then this was he could make it to a Super Bowl, or could make it to at least the AFC Championship. But if this is the Carson Wentz that we saw last year, then that's why I said he's number 2 on. He has a lot to prove. And number 1 to me is not hard. It's Sam Darnold. There's people that are, you get traded to the Panthers, and while I don't think he's going to, I don't think they're good enough to, win a Super Bowl or get to a championship or this, that, and third. A lot of people, it's like you're on one side or the other. You're on the side of Sam Darnold's god awful. He's horrible. This is a bad trade. They gave up so much for him. He sucks. Or you're on the side where, well, if you look, he never had he had Adam Gase as a coach. He never had the only offensive weapon that he had was Robbie Anderson, and he gets traded away. He's never had an offensive line. He's never had a running game that was solid. He's never had really anything around him. He never had a coaching staff that believed in him, or a good coaching staff at that. We need to see, they need to be successful. As far as, when I say they, I mean Carolina. Carolina needs to be successful because of Sam Darnold. And when I say he has a lot to prove, he has a lot. Again, was it mostly him? Was he was he that bad because that's just who he is, or was he that bad because of everything around him? It's kind of like the Carson Wentz syndrome, but on a whole nother level. Like Sam Darnold has been awful his entire career, but that's because a lot of people are wondering, and including myself, is that because again you have Adam Gase, and Adam Gase had us thinking Ryan Tannehill was god awful, and we see how good Ryan Tannehill is in Tennessee. Hell, Adam Gase is only gets his claim to fame because he was a coach for Peyton Manning, but I don't think it's that hard coaching one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So, like I said, is it because of Adam Gase? Is it because they've never had an offensive weapon outside of Robbie Anderson and he got traded away? Is it because their offensive line has been arguably the worst offensive line almost in league history? Is it because their run game has been god awful? I mean, they thought that 80-year-old Frank Gore was going to change their running back fortunes. Like, that's the Jets. So again, I think that Sam Darnold has a lot to prove, man. And this year, I mean, you have the running game in Christian McCaffrey. You have players like Robbie Anderson you get reunited with, DJ Moore. You have a really good tight end. You have Matt Rule as a coach who a lot of people think is a really good coach. You have a good offensive line. You have a good defense. Now it's you have the pieces that they said you didn't have at the Jets. Do you now succeed, or do you look like you've looked for a while? That's what we have to wait and see, and that's why I think he's a number one player and the number one person that has to prove something next year. And there you have it. I appreciate you guys. That has been this week's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. Please subscribe to wherever you're listening. Please subscribe to wherever you're watching. It will definitely mean a lot to me. If you like what I'm wearing, if you want an Unpopular Podcast hoodie, if you want an Unpopular Podcast sweatshirt, shirts, we have joggers. We have different designs. It's in the link in the description below. Whatever you want, just go to the link. You'll see it. I believe the prices are affordable. It would mean a lot. You know what I mean? If you want some Unpopular Podcast merch, link in the description below. But I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And until next time, much love.